Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this Rag Finery Upcycle tutorial. Take a moment to follow us on Instagram and Facebook or visit our website. Now onto the craft. For this tutorial, you're going to need a couple things that you probably have laying around. First is a pair of jeans, some thread, some pins, and make sure you have one sturdy sewing needle with a big eye. You'll also need a good sharp pair of scissors, and then some scrap fabric. You might also need a drawing surface and a marker or a pencil to practice your design. So let's dive right in. First, we're going to cut off one of our pant legs. Since there's 2 layers of fabric in one pant leg, you'll also cut vertically to create 2 different rectangles. And do you see this thing I'm pointing to right here? This is a seam, and we're going to trim it off on both rectangles. But don't throw it away, we'll save it for later, and it's actually going to be the tie-on strap for our crown. And we'll do the same thing on the other rectangle. Now it's time to design our crown. What we're going to make is a thing called a pattern. And think of it as a practice crown. Paper patterns are super helpful when you're sewing because they allow you to try on a design before cutting the fabric, which is permanent. Our crown is ready to go. We've got our paper pattern and we're going to start pinning it to that jean fabric. So here at Rag Finery, we really love to do crafts and get creative with reused materials. And that's because textiles are a huge part of our waste stream. So the more we can divert usable garments from going to landfills, the less we're participating in an extractive and wasteful fashion industry. Okay, this looks great, nice and secure. It's not going to move around when I start cutting. And same thing as before when we cut out our paper pattern. When you cut, make sure you're cutting as close as possible to the paper without actually cutting through the paper. So while you're cutting, I'm just going to give you a quick textile waste fact. Did you know that every second the equivalent of 1 whole garbage truck of textiles is either landfilled or burned? Yeah, I didn't know that either. It's pretty shocking, huh? Yay! Alright, we're all done with the cutting. Okay, now let's take out those pins, put them back in the pin cushion so they don't go rolling around on the floor, and you should have 2 pieces for your crown. And at the end of this, you'll probably have a lot of scraps of denim. And you know at Rag Finery, we love to save textiles from the landfill. So consider saving those scraps and using them to mend holes in your jeans next time you get a tear, or maybe using them as rags, or hang on to them for future upcycle projects. And again, give us a follow on Instagram or Facebook for more inspiration. Okay, and now we're going to get sewing. You'll have your needle and pull a length of thread that's about as wide as both of your arms. You'll fold it in half and thread it through your needle, just as I've done here. And then at the very end, you're going to tie a square knot. And a square knot is just a loop with the little tail tucked in. And then you pull it tight and make sure it's ready to go. Now, if you haven't done a square knot before, don't worry. We're about to walk you through it because it's a pretty foundational skill when it comes to sewing. So make that loop, tuck that little tail through the loop from back to front, and now you're going to pull tight, and there's your knot. Now you're going to trim off the extra tail but be careful not to cut through the knot. This just keeps everything nice and tidy so it doesn't get in the way when you're sewing. Now we can start attaching our straps to the main body of the crown. The important thing to remember as you're sewing on this strap is that the goal is to make this really secure. So we'll just do a bunch of running stitches and make sure that that end is really tightly sewn to the main body of the crown. And if you've never done a running stitch before, don't worry, we're about to walk you through that as well. And there's all kinds of different stitches when you're sewing, but the running stitch is the one we'll be using the most for this project. A running stitch consists of stitches that go up and down through the fabric, kind of like a runner's legs. With a square knot tied at the end of a doubled up thread, come through the back side of the fabric so that your needle is on the side facing you. You'll go back down into the fabric and then put your needle tip through again to come up so that your needle is again on the same side of the fabric that is facing you. Down and then up through the fabric, down again, up again. That's 2 stitches. So now we have 3 total, and we're just going to keep doing that. Going down into the fabric, putting our needle tip up through the fabric again, and be careful not to pull too tight or else the fabric will cinch. We'll go back down and then up and then down again to wrap it up and tie a square knot on the back. So now you can see a line of running stitches. We'll flip it over, we'll tie that square knot. You can put your thumb as close to the knot as possible to keep it from slipping, and then trim the tail. And here's a super quick way of doing a running stitch. So you can pack as many stitches going up and down through the fabric on your needle as possible. An extra long needle helps with this. And then push it through all at once and pull the yarn until all the stitches are flat. When you finish stitching, you'll end again on the back side of your fabric, pull that needle all the way through, flip it over, and tie another square knot as close as possible to the fabric. You can use your thumb again, pin it in place, and then snip. And that's all there is to it. All right, now back to our crown. Okay, so now we've finished on that side, and we're going to tie a little square knot to secure the yarn in place and trim the tail. Don't cut through the knot though. And we'll do one more knot at the end of our thread so we can get ready to sew the other strap on the other side. So position your strap and just sew it on, same as before. Okay, and to wrap this up, we'll tie another square knot and trim all of our tails. And now our first piece of the crown is all done. So now we can start decorating the other part of our crown, and this will be the front. You can use whatever scrap fabric you have laying around. Bright colors are really fun, but ultimately it's just about what you have on hand, what you like, and what you want to use up. Once you get all of your pieces cut out, it's time to start sewing them on. I'll just start by doing a running stitch all the way along the edge of my shape. I'm going to keep my stitches about 1/4 inch apart, and I'll do that kind of super quick way just for demonstration purposes. And now that we're done, we'll flip it over and pull the needle through and tie another square knot on the back to finish it off. And you can see I didn't really leave myself a long enough tail, so you can just cut as close as possible to the eye of the needle and tie a square knot there. And so now when we flip it over, we've got our fully stitched shape on the front of the crown. I'll show you one more way of attaching tiny shapes onto your crown that works a bit better than the running stitch. So you'll start again with doubled up thread and a square knot at the end. Come through the back to the front of your fabric. I've got these tiny stars. I'll come up through the back side of the star and then go back down through both layers of the fabric. So it's almost like a single running stitch. It's kind of hard to pull through all those layers. Make sure you don't pull the thread too tight. Come back up so that you're making an X with your stitches. So it'll just be 2 stitches to make the letter X in the center of your shape. And then you tie another square knot on the back to finish. The reason we do this for those tinier shapes is that, especially with a star, there's so many edges, it's going to be really hard to follow the edge of the star with a bunch of running stitches. So an X is really straightforward, it keeps it in place, and you don't have to worry about following all those tiny edges quite as closely. Okay, so you'll just keep going and add as many shapes as you want onto your crown. And once you're done, we're going to stitch both pieces together. So you'll grab your back piece with the straps attached and then sandwich your front piece on top of that. And you can even pin it together if that helps you with this step. And then we'll start stitching around the edges of our entire crown. And this is the last step before it's ready to wear. And if you want to hide your square knots, every time you start a new length of thread, you can sandwich it in between the 2 pieces of the crown. And if we speed it up, the whole process looks something like this. It's all done. Last step is to try it on. You can just tie this on your head with a loose square knot or a bow tie, and you're ready for your coronation. I hope your rule as a royal is long and fruitful and fair and just. Thanks so much for joining us for this craft. I hope that you take a moment to follow us again and visit our other upcycle videos in the future.